Most people treat emotion like a leak, something that slips out, something they either try to suppress or wear openly, hoping for understanding. But Machiavelli, he saw emotion not as something to manage, but something to deploy. Where others were led by how they felt, he used what he felt and what others felt, like strings on a marionette. Pull one, pause another, and watch the people move. He was not emotionless. He was emotionally strategic. And this tactic, the one nobody talks about, wasn't in how he controlled others through coldness. It was in how he used warmth, vulnerability, intensity, and subtle displays of feeling to gain power, forge alliances, and break defenses. He was, in every way, an emotional puppeteer, and it's the most overlooked weapon in his entire arsenal. Because what's more disarming than a man who seems moved? What's more persuasive than someone who appears sincere? What's more dangerous than someone who can cry, confess, admit weakness, and mean none of it? This is not theory. This is documented. Let's go straight to the prince. In his letter to Lorenzo de' Medici, Machiavelli doesn't open with a threat, a strategy, or a claim to power. He opens with humility. He writes, "I hope it will not be thought presumptuous for a man of low and humble status to discuss and lay down rules of princely government." Why start this way? Because he knew that appearing below someone was the fastest way to get inside their guard. You don't manipulate power with arrogance. You manipulate power by selective vulnerability. This is the core of the emotional puppeteer tactic. Feel when it serves, reveal when it stings, disarm when it buys time, and use every emotion you choose to show as bait. Let's break down how this worked in practice, not in politics, but in people. Machiavelli served under Cesare Borgia, the son of Pope Alexander VI, a man as ruthless as he was brilliant. When Borgia rose to power, Machiavelli didn't challenge him. He didn't try to impress him with intellect or strategy. Instead, he aligned emotionally. He mirrored Borgia's ambition, fed his ego, praised his cunning. He wrote admiringly of his ability to deceive, to crush, to mislead. But beneath that admiration was a calculation. Machiavelli didn't fear Borgia. He studied him, and by praising him, he got close. By seeming loyal, he became invisible, and by making himself emotionally legible. "I see your genius. I admire it. I submit to it," he ensured. He wouldn't be seen as a threat. This is the first principle of the emotional puppeteer. People don't guard against those who reflect their emotional state. When you mirror someone's feeling, you bypass their defense mechanisms. If they're angry, you show concern. If they're excited, you show awe. If they're anxious, you match their pace. They don't notice your intent because they feel seen. That's how manipulation begins, not with control, but with comfort. And Machiavelli used this constantly in diplomatic settings. When he was sent on missions to other city-states, he didn't lead with Florentine strength. He led with human understanding. He'd write long observations on how each city's leaders operated emotionally, their rhythms, their pride, their sensitivity to insult. He'd craft every message, every pause, every expression, not just for logic, but for emotional consequence. He was mapping reactions before making moves, because if you know what someone wants to feel, you know how to move them. This brings us to the second layer of the tactic. Control your display of emotion not to mask the truth, but to create the truth they react to. This is a psychological sleight of hand most people never detect. Machiavelli understood that if you cry, others feel pity. If you hesitate, others feel pressure. If you appear calm, others feel unstable. And if you flip between emotions unpredictably, you create confusion. And confusion is where persuasion becomes dominance. Because in uncertainty, people reach for the most emotionally grounded person in the room. And when that person is you, even if your calm is fake, your control becomes real. This is what Machiavelli called fortune management. Not fate, not chance. but the ability to shape others' perception of reality by mastering your own projection. Think of this like performance, not lying, but deliberately choosing the emotional version of yourself that best suits the situation. Not because you're fake, but because real power means not being emotionally cornered. Now, here's where it gets dangerous, and where Machiavelli took the tactic even further. He didn't just use his own emotions. He weaponized the emotions of others. He'd identify the sensitive man in a council and feed him criticism just vague enough to trigger self-doubt. He'd praise a rival publicly, just enough to make them overconfident, cocky, and ultimately sloppy. He'd raise hopes during negotiations, then withdraw, creating confusion, making people chase clarity they didn't even want before. He knew that emotions don't just expose people, they drive them. And when someone's feelings are in motion, you don't fight them. You steer them. You feed their pride. You stroke their fear. You nod at their rage. You sympathize with their confusion. And as they ride those feelings, you install suggestions. This is emotional puppeteering at its most invisible. And the average person? They'll say, "He just really understands people," or "She's just naturally warm. She just knows how to talk to you." But no, it's not magic. It's not empathy. It's precision emotional management. Machiavelli wasn't charismatic in the modern sense. He didn't smile his way into power. He read emotion like an assassin reads terrain, looking for every elevation, every shadow, every blind spot. Because when you understand how someone wants to feel, you don't just influence them, you own them. You're not the most powerful person in the room because you speak the most. You're the most powerful because you control the emotional current without ever revealing the source. That's the puppeteer's secret. And in a modern world obsessed with self-expression, it's one of the most effective and most underestimated forms of dominance. Because people today are told to be emotionally honest, to be transparent, to speak their truth. And when someone does that, they give away the blueprint to their mind, their needs, their weaknesses, their thresholds. But a puppeteer gives nothing, yet pulls everything. Machiavelli would thrive in modern power games for one reason. He understood that emotion is the fastest path to influence because it bypasses logic. You can debate facts, but you can't debate how someone feels. So what did he do? He used emotions not to prove anything, but to move people into agreement without resistance. Let's bring this to a real-world setup. Imagine a political leader today negotiating behind closed doors. The opposing side is rigid, emotionally distant, formal. Most people would mirror that formality, thinking that logic and hard evidence will sway them. But Machiavelli would take a different route. He'd introduce emotional contrast. He'd lower his voice slightly. He'd share a moment of personal difficulty, a story that seems unrelated, about pressure, about betrayal, about legacy, just vulnerable enough to soften the air. He'd make himself seem more human than the others in the room. Why? Because when you're the first to show emotion strategically, you force others to recalibrate. They begin to feel. And when people are feeling, they're no longer anchoring themselves to numbers. They're navigating internal tension, the desire to match your emotional openness or to distance themselves from it. Both routes give you the upper hand. If they try to match, you've made the connection. If they try to distance, you've thrown them off balance. This is what Machiavelli called the introduction of asymmetry, a state where the opponent no longer knows how to position themselves because you've entered through a door they weren't guarding. And now their logic is fraying. They're thinking about emotion, power, consequence, image, all at once. You've multiplied their internal threads, which means you can now pull them. That's what a puppeteer does. They don't overpower you. They splinter your focus. Here's another tactic from Machiavelli's real behavior. Calculated silence after emotional display. After a moment of apparent vulnerability, he would withdraw. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just enough to let the other person sit with it, to create discomfort, an emotional vacuum. People hate emotional vacuums. They rush to fill it with sympathy, with promises, with overcorrection, and in that rush, they expose themselves. This is how you make your emotions do the work for you, not through performance, but through placement. Machiavelli was playing an emotional chessboard while everyone else was still arguing over the rules. Now let's talk about power dynamics. Because emotional manipulation only works when you know how different people assign value to feelings. A soldier values courage, a diplomat values respect, a ruler values legacy, a citizen values fairness. So if you want to pull their emotional strings, you don't give your feelings. You give theirs, reflected back in a way they can't ignore. Machiavelli didn't just say, "This is what I think." He'd say, "This is how I know you feel." He would frame their internal world for them, in his words. So when they responded, they were already operating inside the structure he'd built. Here's a perfect example of that from The Prince. He writes, "A man who wishes to profess goodness at all times will come to ruin among so many who are not good." This isn't just a warning, it's emotional provocation. It's designed to create discomfort in the reader, to make them question their softness, their idealism. And once they feel that pressure, they're ready to accept the harder lesson underneath. Therefore, learn to be not good when circumstances demand it. That's the pivot. He uses emotional dissonance, the shame of being naive, the fear of being weak, to push the reader toward ruthlessness. That's not persuasion. That's programming. You feel something, then you want to resolve the feeling. He gives you a path and you take it, thinking it's yours. But it never was. And here's where it gets even deeper. A true puppeteer doesn't just pull strings individually. They control how people respond to each other. Machiavelli would walk into a council of leaders, and if he wanted to isolate someone, he wouldn't confront them directly. He'd redirect emotional attention. He'd praise another person's insight just enough to spark quiet envy. He'd joke with a rival's ally just enough to seem bonded. He'd insert a faint comment about someone's past betrayal, not as accusation, but as curiosity. And then, silence. Now the room is fractured, emotionally unstable. Paranoia has entered. Everyone's recalibrating, but he hasn't done anything except tilt the emotional air. This is how the puppeteer stays invisible. They never appear to be the source of the emotion they cause. They remain centered, calm, observant, while everyone else rearranges themselves around the tension they created. This isn't cruelty. This is design. And once you see it, you realize most people aren't playing this game. They're reacting, explaining, justifying. But the ones who rise, they're doing what Machiavelli mastered centuries ago. Not controlling people, controlling what people feel when they're around you. There's a reason the most dangerous people are rarely the most emotional, and also rarely the most detached. They live in between. One moment they're cold steel, the next they're warm voice. One moment they flatter you, the next they correct you. They are unpredictable, not because they're erratic, but because they're deliberately inconsistent. Machiavelli understood this. The more consistent your emotional behavior, the easier you are to manipulate. But if someone can't predict how you'll respond, they can't plan against you. This is what made Machiavelli so dangerous to his enemies. He could be dismissive in private, generous in public, brutal in strategy, yet charming in letters. His emotional range wasn't a flaw, it was a facade, a toolkit. In The Prince, he doesn't preach emotional rigidity. He doesn't say, "Be stoic at all times." No, he says, a prince must be a great pretender and dissembler. That word, dissembler, is everything. It means to hide one's true nature under a mask of reaction, to be able to show anything, but be owned by nothing. This is emotional contradiction as a tactic. When you contradict people's expectations, not once, but repeatedly, They become unsure of the rules, and once the rules break down, they stop strategizing. They become reactive. Here's how that plays out today. Let's say you run a team. You're usually strict, clear, high standards, emotionally neutral. That's the expectation. Then, without warning, you show a personal side. You mention something that shook you, not performatively, intentionally. You pause. Then you go back to being strict. What just happened? You shattered the emotional pattern. Your people start questioning their map of you. Is he more complex than we thought? Does he feel more than he lets on? Did I underestimate how deeply he watches? Now you are no longer a role, you are a presence. And presences are harder to negotiate with than positions. This is what Machiavelli did again and again, even in his writing. His letters to friends were warm, funny, even self-deprecating, but his political commentary, ice-cold, brutal, efficient. Why? Because emotional contrast makes people pay closer attention. When someone is always intense, you tune it out. When someone is always calm, you assume nothing shakes them. But when someone switches, when they blend warmth and coldness, openness and control, you become alert. That's what Machiavelli wanted. Not for people to admire him, but for them to never feel comfortable in his presence. Because emotional comfort makes people careless, but emotional uncertainty makes them cautious. Now, here's a key part of the puppeteer tactic that few understand. You don't need to manipulate everyone. You only need to unsettle the influential one. Machiavelli never tried to sway entire crowds with raw feeling. He targeted individuals, the key influencer, the pivot point in the room. He'd watch who the others looked at before responding, who they deferred to in silence, who carried subtle dominance. And then, he'd emotionally engage that person with a tone shift, a planted phrase, or a contradiction that threw them off just enough to change the temperature of the group. Because emotion spreads. It's contagious. You don't need to move everyone. You just need to move the one holding the strings. That's how the puppeteer moves in shadows. And if you think this is just political theory, think again. Modern influencers, CEOs, media personalities, the most effective ones use this tactic constantly. They might appear emotionally transparent in interviews, vulnerable, humble, expressive. Then, in private, they're calculating, measured, icy. They contradict expectations. And that contradiction becomes power. People keep trying to decode them. They obsess over when they're being real. But here's the truth. There is no real, only useful. That's what Machiavelli understood. He didn't believe in a fixed emotional identity. He believed in emotional adaptability with intent. He would feel deeply, but only show what the moment required. He would care, but never let the caring compromise clarity. And when he needed to sway someone, he wouldn't out-argue them. He'd out-feel them by showing the precise emotion they needed to see in order to drop their guard, doubt their view, or reinforce their need for him. This is where emotional contradiction becomes a weapon of obedience. Because people don't fear what they understand. They fear what they almost understand but can't quite predict. So if you're always calm, they try to break you. If you're always aggressive, they try to tame you. But if you're occasionally gentle and occasionally brutal, they don't try anything at all. They just watch. They wait. They second guess. And now you're leading the game, not with power, but with presence. Machiavelli would call this the illusion of depth, where you appear to be more layered than anyone else in the room, even if you're not. Because once they think you're deep, they stop treating you like a player and start treating you like the board. Influence is temporary, control is fleeting, but dependence lasts. And Machiavelli knew there was no stronger form of emotional power than creating dependency without force. That's where the true puppet strings are hidden, not in visible dominance, but in the invisible emotional contracts people sign without even knowing. Most assume control means intimidation, a fear-based hierarchy. But Machiavelli often used the opposite. He'd win people through emotional generosity, subtle empathy, or precisely timed moments of understanding, and then leave just enough absence that they would come chasing. This is the fourth layer of the emotional puppeteer. Give them emotional safety once, then take it away, not to punish, but to position. When you make someone feel deeply understood, even for a moment, you trigger a powerful illusion. They get me, they see me, and once someone feels seen by you, they begin to seek your validation without realizing it. They recalibrate their language, they adjust their posture, they try to keep access to your emotional center. And now, you're no longer just a presence in the room. You've become their anchor. This tactic is most effective when done quietly. You don't reward them with overt praise. You don't react the way they expect. Instead, you withhold. And it's that withholding, that silence, that absence of emotional confirmation that begins to gnaw at them. They start doing the work for you, anticipating what will please you, trying to regain what they think they lost. Machiavelli used this in diplomacy relentlessly. He would write warm, open, respectful letters to certain individuals, describing not just policies but feelings. He would express admiration, even affection. He would build rapport, alignment, shared understanding. Then he'd stop writing, and in the vacuum he left, others wrote back, more revealingly, more eagerly, more emotionally invested. They wanted the connection back. They wanted to feel seen again. This is how you trap someone without threat. You create a feeling they want to keep, and then you let them chase it. Because once someone is emotionally chasing you, they're no longer measuring your value objectively. They're trying to maintain an internal balance, one you control. This is emotional leverage, and it works in every domain. In relationships, you listen more deeply than anyone else. You connect, you reveal something personal, then you withdraw. They lean in harder. In negotiations, you give early, generously, emotionally. Then when they expect agreement, you hesitate. They offer more to keep the tone. In teams, you validate someone's perspective sincerely. Then, next time, you delay response. They begin to seek your alignment more proactively, not because you demanded it, but because they once felt seen. Machiavelli understood this long before it became business psychology. But he didn't just use emotional debt to keep people engaged. He used it to trap them into predictability. Because someone who's trying to win your emotional attention becomes incredibly easy to read. They'll reveal their insecurities. They'll repeat their arguments. They'll over-explain when they feel distance. They'll pause more after saying something they're unsure about, waiting to see your face. You become their mirror. But the mirror is rigged, because every reaction you give now, every smile, every silence, becomes a signal they try to interpret. They try to anticipate what you want, how you feel, where you stand. And in doing so, they stop strategizing for themselves. They start reacting to you. That's when you've flipped the dynamic. You're no longer trying to win them. They're trying not to lose you. This is the Machiavellian reversal. Emotional dominance disguised as warmth. Now, most people misuse this. They try to fake emotional presence or vulnerability. But Machiavelli's genius was this. He made his emotional gestures feel real. Not because he was acting, but because he selected which truths to reveal. He wasn't cold, he was calculatedly warm. He would show you just enough of his humanity to create connection, but never enough to give you a weapon. He didn't hide who he was. He simply controlled what version of himself you saw and when. It's the difference between a weapon left lying on the table and one drawn at the perfect moment. Timing, contrast, intent. This is what separates manipulation from mastery. Now, here's the final layer of the trap. Let them feel like they're influencing you. Machiavelli would often allow someone to convince him, to let them believe their logic or emotions swayed him. He'd nod slowly, adjust a sentence, concede a point. He would make them feel intelligent, respected, heard. But underneath, the decision had already been made. He understood that nothing binds a person to you more than believing they changed you. That creates emotional pride, and pride binds faster than trust. Because when someone thinks, he listens to me, I matter to him, I shaped that outcome, they begin to emotionally invest in your narrative. They protect it, defend it, justify it to others. Even if they were never the ones steering, they feel ownership, and ownership is loyalty in disguise. By the time they realize it wasn't real influence, they're already inside your structure, already defending you to others, already tangled in a feeling they can't fully explain. That's how Machiavelli won without threats, how he turned emotional gestures into behavioral chains, how he built alliances where others thought they'd built friendships. The puppeteer doesn't pull with force, he moves with feeling, and by the time you realize you're dancing, the strings are already tied. Machiavelli's genius didn't end with the one-on-one manipulation of feelings. That was just the surface. What made him lethal wasn't that he could control a conversation, it was that he could shape an entire environment where emotions worked in his favor without him even being present. He didn't just manage people, he engineered atmospheres. Because once you understand how people respond emotionally, not just to you but to each other, you stop needing to pull every string manually. You build systems that trigger the same emotions again and again, like an emotional machine that runs itself. This is where his mastery transcended personality and became structural power. Look at the courts he advised, the councils he served on, the systems he praised and studied. He didn't just care about laws or titles or orders. He paid attention to the emotional tone of every structure. What makes people afraid to speak? What makes them desperate for proximity? What rewards are seen as intimate, even if minor? What punishments feel personal, even if symbolic? Because power is most stable when people regulate themselves, not out of rules, but out of feelings. Machiavelli admired this most in Cesare Borgia's rise. Not just the killings, not the betrayals, but the emotional climate he created, where no one was sure who was favored, who was next, or what the true cost of loyalty would be. And yet, everyone competed to prove it. It wasn't about terror, it was about emotional instability. He created a system where people couldn't find equilibrium, and so they reached for it by becoming more obedient, more committed, more performative. That's the highest form of puppeteering, making people feel that their survival, identity, or worth is connected to a shifting emotional standard. And once they buy into that, they don't need to be told what to do. They volunteer to maintain the illusion. We see this everywhere today. Workplaces where the boss never gives clear feedback, but employees obsess over facial expressions. Social groups where silence is interpreted as punishment, and attention is currency. Families where love is offered inconsistently, so children grow into adults who try to earn it every day. That's not chaos. That's an emotional economy, and someone's always cashing in. Machiavelli understood that if you make emotion scarce, you make attention powerful. If you make approval rare, you make loyalty desperate. If you make understanding conditional, you make people offer their secrets to buy it. This is how kingdoms hold, not through blood, through invisible contracts of feeling. Because in the end, the most loyal subjects aren't the ones with swords to their backs. They're the ones still hoping to be seen, still hoping to be heard, still chasing that one moment when the prince or the puppeteer turns and gives them a nod that says, "You matter," a nod that costs you nothing but keeps them yours. And when you can control that moment, when you decide when, where, and how someone gets that recognition, you no longer need armies, titles, or threats. You just need silence. You just need the pause. You just need them to feel almost, because almost seen is a stronger leash than fully embraced. It keeps people leaning forward. It keeps people obeying shadows. It keeps people wrapped around a center you no longer even have to defend. That is the final lesson. Machiavelli didn't conquer with logic. He didn't dominate with strength. He ruled by installing emotional need and then staying just out of reach. Because once you do that, you've made them loyal, not to you, but to the feeling of wanting you. And that is a chain no one can break, not even them.